Alright, so a lot of y'all have been seeing me on the channel cover competitive Metal Fight, specifically the limited format. That's my favorite Metal Fight format right now. I think I've done a couple of standard videos, but mainly we've been focusing on the limited format and just a lot of Metal Fight content, really. And I've done a couple of burst videos, but mainly those have been like shorts and whatnot. But today I want to talk about particularly why the Beyblade Burst standard metagame is easily, I gotta say, the worst metagame ever in Beyblade. So if I had to recommend a burst format, it'd probably have to be the GT format, because that's like the most balanced burst format, or maybe even classic. But when you get to burst standard, the metagame is really just, it's not healthy, it's not fun, it's not interesting, it's boring, and well, I'll just get into all of that. So it's gonna be a little bit of a rant. I've been wanting to do this for a little bit, but you know, we're just going to go over a little bit, a slight brief history of competitive Beyblade Burst and explain really why Burst Standard is a horrible competitive metagame. It's not even competitive, to be honest, because it comes down to stamina. Stamina is pretty much the main reason why Burst Standard is horrible. Where did I just put Perseus at? Because Perseus could go over there too. Oh, here we go. These two monstrosities are pretty much the main reason why Burst Standard is just bad. Okay, now before I even get into this, I know people are gonna say, but Metal Fight Burst fans might say, but Metal Fight Standard is boring too, because of this guy right here, RDF. But I will say though, in Burst Standard, RDF, even though it is broken, it can struggle in same spin. It can struggle in same spin stamina, opposite spin stamina. RDF is really good, but I've seen RDF lose before, right? And even then, in Metal Fight Standard, you still have variety. You have your stamina stuff, you have your attack stuff, you have your defense and balance stuff. In Burst Standard, pretty much it is nothing but stamina types. Stamina types that go to life after death matches that are decided within a very small margin. If you look at competitive Burst Standard tournaments, you're going to see a lot of stamina matches that come down to like the last point second, and then they got to rewind the footage and see who won. Like, now I know spin steel or stamina matches happen, right? And they come down to the wire. That happens in any Beyblade format. But when it is the main thing that determines the winner or loser, when stamina is so over centralizing and you're literally coming down to a point second to determine who won, like, that is not the fun of Beyblade. The best thing about Beyblade, some of the best formats or something like that, is when battles are explosive, when you see big hits and stuff like that. When it's just a bunch of just stamina, it is ridiculous. Now, stamina Beyblades, if they are given a lot of life after death, can be powerful. But the thing is, in Metal Fight Standard, in Metal Fight, there would always be counters to certain things. Like, stamina, I don't think has ever been over-centralizing, because Metal Fight has a lot of solid attack options. In Burst, specifically Burst Standard, a lot of the attack options are, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But basically, I will say this. Burst started off really good competitively with the single and dual layers. Because the single and dual layers, they could burst, and stamina, you know, they might be able to outspin, but usually stamina Beyblades didn't have the best burst resistance, which was a trade-off for being able to spin a lot, right? So it kept things balanced. I mean, even with where's the monster at? Hold up. Where's the monster? Here it is. Even with, like, the Death Scyther Beyblade that a lot of people say was broken because it was just really round, and then same with Death Scyther's Evolution being really round, I'd say even then, they still were not immune to bursting. They still are able to get burst by a solid attacker, and attack types were really good in the beginning of Burst. You had things like Excalibur and Valkyrie being really solid attack types, and, you know, even then, I'd say attacks always really had a decent spot in the early Burst metagame. I'd say every type had a good little spot in the Burst metagame. I mean, some types were more dominant than others. Like a lot of, I'd say in a lot of Beyblade metagames, a lot of Beyblade competitive games, it will go down to stamina versus attack, right? That's just the way usually things shake out. But I'd say defense and balance combos still had a niche in early Beyblade Burst. Now, when you start to get into like when burst started getting crazy is when they got to the God Layer series, and we started to get some crazy gimmicks. Like we had, oh, this is a Valkyrie that has the bound layer, but it has the strike chip in it. But even then, we got the dual layer Longinus had metal on it, which made it crazy, but it still was, I would argue Longinus still wasn't as good of attacker as Excalibur or single layer Valkyrie, but it was still powerful. But it wasn't too over centralizing. Then we get to a God, and we get some left spinning. This is like Meteor Drago. We get Fafnir, and Fafnir was kind of crazy because it was the first, like, we saw Longinus before use left spin for attack, but now we got left spin for stamina, right? Which, you know, was really powerful at first, especially when you pair it with where'd I put it? Well, you pair it with this driver right here, Bearing, which burst has Bearing, just like Bearing drive in Metal Fight. But the thing is though, Bearing, what kept Bearing balanced is that Bearing had a weaker spring, so that way the Beyblade had worse burst resistance. Now, when a left spin Beyblade and a right spin Beyblade spin against each other, it is like bursting becomes harder, because the way bursting normally works, let me get another let me you know what, Excalibur is good to show this. So we have Beyblades spinning, what, they're gonna go the same direction, right? So, oh wait, no, it's this way. Wait, hold up. Okay, there we go. So we got Beyblades going this way, right? And the thing is about burst Beyblades is that when they're going the same rotation, a solid hit, like if a Beyblade, if it gets hit hard enough right here, it'll cause it to lose some clicks or some slopes, right? If it's the same spin, because the same spin pushes the Beyblade, it pushes the layer back, right? But when it's the opposite spin, it becomes harder to have that happen, because Beyblades are pushing against each other, giving each other more spin. And when you push a Beyblade that way, when you push it the direction it's going, it's not going to burst. It has to be being pushed the opposite way. So that makes it harder for left spin Beyblades to get burst. But the thing is though, if you spin a left spin Beyblade slow enough though, if you spin it slow enough, you will be able to get what's called a slow-mo burst, which is basically because, like I said, when you're hitting a Beyblade this way, you won't be able to burst it. But this Beyblade, with the amount of force, could burst itself. Anyway, that's just a little bit of intro to burst, because I know a lot of y'all are Metal Fight fans. But with that being said, even with Fafnir's introduction, and it was really good, it was a little bit balanced. But what was not balanced was we also got our first dual spin, which at first dual spin was not broken. We had Legend Spriggan, which was good for attack pretty much. It reminds me a lot of Gravity from Gravity Perseus, because even though Gravity Perseus can dual spin, and you could argue they could spin steel, right? Gravity has a lot of aggression, which makes it can spin steel, but it's not ideal. It's not overly broken. It struggles to spin steel from both directions. Same with Legend Spriggan. It is a very recoily Beyblade. This guy self-bursts a whole lot, which made dual spin balance at the beginning. But then we got Spriggan Requiem, which really began to introduce the downfall, which is basically when a Beyblade can do it all, right? So, you know, this Beyblade has rubber and has good attack. It can do pretty much anything, but people abuse this for stamina. And the thing is, if a Beyblade can be abused for stamina, it will be. And so everyone started to slap on Bearing onto Spriggan, but Bearing still had a weak spring, which made it, you know, that at least balanced it out. But not only that, it could get KO'd though. It could still get knocked out. And attack types were still viable. And yeah, so that's what kind of kept it in check a little bit, even though Spriggan Requiem was very, very broken upon its introduction. But you know what? The next season in Beyblade Burst Cho-Z, that's when everything had metal. We did get good attackers. We got some like Cho-Z Achilles, good attacker. But then we also got some little broken mess, which is Perfect Phoenix, which just has insane stamina and life after death, but it could still get knocked out. It was hard to burst this guy because of the double. This is the Beyblade with the projectile. Yep, it comes off, and so it kind of gets to burst twice, but it could still get knocked out. Perfect Phoenix could get knocked out, and especially if you were able to knock off the armor first, and you hit it hard, it could still burst. But they introduced the burst locking thing, which is basically if you spin the this is Spriggan, Cho-Z Spriggan, and if you spin it hard enough, this little tab will come out. That little tab will come out, and then that puts a little burst stopper right there. Yep, you see a little black burst stopper, making it harder for the Beyblade to burst. Now, that is not always guaranteed to come out, but still, the idea of dual spin, and even then, you know, even though this one doesn't have rubber, right, it is very round. And when something is round, it makes it a very, very easy to spin steel from the opposite direction. So, but we still had, you know, could still get knocked out, I gotta say, because at least we had good attackers. Now, we go on to the GT format. We do have Lord Spriggan, which is my favorite Beyblade, just because in burst. This is my favorite burst Beyblade, just because it's so stupid, because it could spin steel from both directions, and it's good at stamina and attack, which is crazy. But, and it has crazy burst resistance. But, what really kept Spriggan in check is we also had insane attackers in the GT format. Which, notice, the trend. If there is a broken stamina possibility, there is attackers that can keep it in check, which helps the Beyblade metagame to be, it can be over-centralizing, but still be somewhat balanced. Which is why the GT format, I gotta say, is the last solid format, because then power creep starts getting crazy. Like, burst, because it's the longest running format in Beyblade, of course it's gonna have power creep. Because, like, for example, we're looking at, let's look at this. Single layer Valkyrie, this is the 4th season. We got a Command Dragon right here. And look at that. Look at the difference. Look at how massive. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. That's crazy. Like, that is power creep. Like if we want to compare, like, okay, here's Lightning El Drago compared to a 0G Beyblade. Like, as you can see, the 0G Beyblade is clearly bigger. This is clearly bigger, but it's not nearly as a big of a difference as this is. But really, now we get to sparking, and sparking is really where the downfall starts to happen, right? Because while we got a lot of interesting Beyblades in sparking, of course, like I said, if something can be abused for stamina, it will be. That's where World Spriggan comes in. It's just like Cho-Z Spriggan, and it's round. And then we got the Drift Driver, which has ultimate life after death, which makes this guy crazy left spin, opposite spin. But if it's same spin, it'll get clapped up, right? But at least, you know, it was pretty much, sparking, I gotta say, was pretty much a battle between World and Rage. Rage, Helios, you know, people even use this for stamina. People put Drift on here just because it is round. It could spin steel, which is crazy. Just because of the shape and getting under, and also have crazy attack power with it. But, you know, at least we had stamina and attack. You know, these are probably the two most centralizing Beyblades, but, you know, at least there was somewhat variety. And then we get to Dynamite Battle. Now, Dynamite Battle, at first, pretty much everything was running Vanish Longinus, but we have Vanish Achilles, right? Because when Achilles came out a year after, right? But when Achilles came out, it was discovered that it was a really good stamina core, so we started using it for stamina. Before that, people would use Guilty, the Longinus core, for stamina, because it had a lot of weight. So essentially, this was the combo that ran the meta with Bearing, right? This is Vanish. Oh, I have Bearing Mobius on here right now, but essentially it was Vanish, insert whatever disc, probably like Giga or Tapered or Over, Bearing. And, you know, that combo was so annoying because it could spin steel from everything. And what made it harder, the best Fafnir, to be honest, was that Fafnir was always kept in check by left spin attackers such as Longinus. These two kind of checked each other. Well, for the most part, Longinus checked Fafnir, which has always made Longinus a good attack type because it can do good against opposite spin attack, but really it can smash any left spin Beyblades. But the thing is, Longinus actually struggled to beat Vanish just because Vanish is very, very round, making it harder for Longinus to get an opportunity to burst it, which makes, you know, when attack types when stamina becomes to the point where attack types struggle against it, and it comes down to if attack type does not knock it out, You know, when there's a high chance that an attack type won't be able to knock out a Beyblade because of the weight. And we got to keep in mind, these Beyblades are also very heavy, significantly heavier, right? These are the heaviest Beyblades we have ever gotten. And so that makes it even harder to get knockouts. And it also, like, because it's so hard to get knockouts, it makes people one-on-one stamina, because why would I risk running an attack type if my attack type only has 2 seconds to do good, and if the stamina type can just avoid the attack type's attacks, pretty much we're good. And that's why we saw stamina and burst standard become the central meta, the central part. And not only that, we saw the introduction of bearing dash. Now, bearing, you know, the biggest thing that kept bearing in check was that it had a weak spring. Bearing dash drivers, if you didn't know, for burst, it's like what dash drivers are essentially, you know, most Beyblade drivers, here's the biggest example. So most Beyblade drivers are white right there, right? That indicates just normal driver. But you do have dash drivers have a red thing right there, which indicates it has, and there's a golden spring inside, which indicates a significant more burst resistance, which, you know, kind of made it harder. The central mechanic of bursting became a lot rarer as the time went on. Even in GT, I gotta say, bursting isn't that common. Bursting is just really common in the earlier metagames, right? But bursting is particularly not common now, when we get things like that add a lot of burst resistance. But not only that, we got this guy, Wind Dragon, which, you know, a lot of Beyblades are like, okay, it's like a circle, but it's thin and kind of rigid. This thing, even though it's very circular, it's rigid. This thing is literally just a circle. Look, it's literally just a circle, which is the main reason why things like in Metal Fight, you got something like Duo that's crazy, but at least Duo doesn't have insane weight with it. This is really big too. It's like, it's wide, and there was a Beyblade called Maximum Garuda that had the same thing in earlier Beyblade, but it had horrible burst resistance, which kept it in check. This thing has great burst resistance, especially with the Dragon Core being able to, you know, it has this spring gimmick, which makes it harder to burst. Like, it means you gotta run stamina, and because attack isn't guaranteed to work, stamina is pretty much always guaranteed to work. People always run stamina types. And even when we got newer attackers like Ultimate Valkyrie is great, but it is not a surefire way. It is not guaranteed to always KO, especially when you got heavy round Beyblades, when wind is so big. And then you got things like Zyphoid, which Zyphoid Excalibur is one of the best attackers, but the problem is, because of how big it is, its point right here gets worn very quickly, and when that happens, it becomes pretty much not even useful, because you need the most powerful attack to be able to handle these staminas. But really, when attack can get worn real easy, why go through the effort of trying to run attack when you could just run stamina? And that is really what has happened to Burst Standard. It is nothing but stamina matches. And the thing is, people spend a lot of money to get these ultra ridiculous perks. Like right now we have Bearing Drift, which is literally this drift driver that has Crazy Life After Death, which is a free spinning part that has like this big thing around it that helps it balance a lot. It's like that, but it has a bearing which allows it to essentially, this is the ultimate driver. It can spin steel from both left and right, and it's hard to knock out. It's crazy. You have that, and really, there's no solid counter to it. I mean, it's not a dash driver, true, which means you can get an attack, but the thing is, the fact that attack types aren't always guaranteed to work, like, I mean, granted, there's no Beyblade strategy is guaranteed to work, but with attack types, if an attack type you mislaunch and you don't hit, you're done. It automatically wins. So people are always running stamina, and you always see 3v3 stamina matches. And what people have been doing, they'll run Bearing Drift, they'll run Bearing Mobius, they'll run Drift, and then you got Metal Bearing Drift, which is this, but the cap on it, it's essentially this, but this part is made out of metal, and people will use that and think it's so cool. And like, look at me, I got this expensive part, and I'm like, bro, like, it's annoying. I mean, it's like, what are you trying to prove, bruh? Who can outspin? And it's literally, I kid you not, the Beyblade Burst Standard meta. I've watched Zenki. This is no shade to Zenki. Love his videos. But Zenki literally goes over little things like weight tuning, because that's how big stamina has gotten. Literally just like changing the way you position the weight, position the core, making sure every single aspect is balanced, like balance tuning. Like maybe having the core like this isn't ideal, but if you put it like this, that'll give you just a little bit more stamina, and that'll help you beat mirror matches, because there's an insane amount of mirror matches in Beyblade Burst Standard. And that's ridiculous. Like, are there mirror matches in Beyblade Burst? I mean, in Beyblade Metal Fight, sure. But the thing in Metal Fight, not only that, is Metal Fight matches are usually over quickly. Because Metal Fight, even the roundest parts, I gotta say, are susceptible to getting knocked out. I mean, just because it's metal contact. So things are always interesting, right? With Burst, stamina just got so over-centralizing to the point where it's boring. Like, and the craziest part is, it's the weight issue, because bearing drift in the GT format, right? A couple seasons before, bearing drift, this is allowed in the older GT format. It's not, this isn't even that broken there, mainly because the parts, the Beyblades aren't even that heavy, but not only that, there's a lot more balance. There's a lot more Beyblades that can do attack. Now it's like, literally, it's nothing but stamina in Beyblade Burst Standard. And that is just ridiculous. That is a boring metagame. If anything, I think we should have like a Beyblade. You know what? I don't even think there's any saving. Because I just think, I think as the years go on, I think people will just, I think Beyblade Burst Standard, I think will just be a forgotten metagame. Just because it's boring. It's not fun. It's like, if anything, I'm starting to see, there's a reason why competitive Burst content is not nearly as popular as competitive Metal Fight, and thanks to people like Nazuma, even Plastic Gen is getting more interactions than Burst Standard stuff. I mean, that's just because Burst Standard is not a fun metagame. It is not, okay? If I don't understand. If someone wants to tell me why Burst Standard, like, if someone wants to tell me why having a matchup with just stamina Beyblades is fun and competitive, let me know. If you want to tell me why that's competitive, if why literally, like, the exact positioning of your armor and the specific orientation of your disc when you lock it in, the very small details, if those very little details make the Beyblade competitive, I want y'all to tell me why, because I legitimately don't see it. So anyway, I'm sorry about the rant. Wait, no, I'm not sorry. Someone needed to say it. Yeah, but I gotta say though, Burst Beyblades, they look cool. Like, all these Beyblades look solid. Like, I gotta say, Burst, as much as I love Metal Fight, Burst, because of how they're bigger, they're able to have a lot more designs on them. So I gotta admit, Burst Beyblades look really cool, look really solid, and that's the one thing I will give Burst. But and you know what? I am a fan of Burst. I'm just, not a fan of this. Like, just move all the, actually I like Rage, even though it's broken. It's fun to use, so we'll keep Rage in there. But it literally, power creep is I mean, when you ever hear about power creep in games like Pokemon, games like, I guess you could say, I don't know, Overwatch or whatever the hell, if there's power creep in games, right? It's just, power creep is how something dies, I gotta say. And so, and you know what? I think, the metagame, Burst is fun. I mean, I got into Burst about a year ago. Wait, no, actually going on 2 years now. It's getting ready to go on 2 years since I've been into Burst. And I think there are a lot of fun aspects about it. I think I like Burst. I do like Burst. So, let me know your favorite part of Burst down below. But also, tell me what you think. Because I just think competitive Burst, like, I look at a Swift highlight of, like, a Metal Fight tournament. I'm like, bro, that's crazy. Because they, like, Beyblades and Metal Fight be going crazy. Usually, Metal Fight, like, I don't think I've seen a Metal Fight match go beyond, like maybe, like, 2 minutes max. But, yeah. Burst is very fun. I do recommend, if you get into Burst, use the GT format, because you can customize the GT format, right? Burst has a lot more customization than Metal Fight, specifically in, like, the GT format and stuff like that, right? So I do recommend GT and below. That's really what I'm gonna recommend. Burst Standard stuff is just, I don't recommend getting into it. It is also very expensive. GT is probably the most affordable Burst metagame to get into, just because you got the Pro Series and stuff like that. But DB is pretty much expensive. But yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah. yeah, it's very, you know, it's very over centralizing. When stamina is the best type, that's when something is not right. If stamina is the best type, that means, you know, that means that attack types are pointless. And you know, a good Beyblade metagame doesn't necessarily mean that every type is equal, but it's just every type has an opportunity. Like, there's a good attack type, a good defense type, a good stamina type, a good balance type. At least there needs to be at least one good of all of that. And because of how good stamina has in burst standard, defense literally does not exist. It's literally just stamina and attack, but it's mostly stamina and stamina. Because the idea with a defense is that it would counter attack types, but when people aren't using attack types, people aren't going to use defense types, because defense types get outspun by these stamina types. And because these stamina types are so big and round, and even have aspects of defense types, like the rubber in Dynamite Perseus, like it defeats the purpose to use like a defense type with like a rubber bottom, because it's like why do that if people aren't even using attacks that much, and you're going to get outspun by a stamina type. But anyway, that is my rant, and that is why, you know, that is my, like, the downfall of Beyblade versus competitive or something like that. Let me know your thoughts down below. I just wanted to get this out, mainly because I don't see a lot of people talking about it. I think it's like an unspoken thing that a lot of people say, because I've had conversations with people and they agree. But yeah, and then also I will share this. Like, last summer, I was a TikToker. I come from Baytalk, if y'all didn't know that. It's literally on my link tree if you want to see a lot of my Beyblade videos. I started making Beyblade content on TikTok, and it was fun at first as I was getting into Beyblade Burst. I thought it was fun, but then as I started to see a lot of the stamina stuff grow, I didn't really like, and my comments were flooded with kids telling me, you know, all these ridiculous stamina combos, and I'm telling them, like, look, yo, I'm not doing that because it's boring. I don't want to do Vanish, whatever. And then it became, like, if anyone did, people would do tournaments and, like submit your combo and whatnot, or submit, like, your stock combo, and literally the combos that would always win would pretty much always be stamina combos. So, yeah. Anyway, that was my rant. I had to get that out. Ooh, it's almost 30 minutes. Should I go for another 3 minutes to make it around 30? Nah. Anyway, I should have said at the beginning, get your popcorn and stuff, because this is about to be a minute video. Y'all about to sit here for a minute. But anyway, that was it. I know I said I was going to do a Zero Use Monday video yesterday, but I was still kind of like, you know, in grad mode. But anyway, I'm gonna try and get these daily videos out there for y'all. I'm gonna try and do some daily content before I start, you know, doing some work, grind, and stuff like that. But anyway, thank y'all so much for watching, and yeah, thank y'all. Oh yeah, and one last thing I wanted to add is basically we got a lot of cool Beyblades that just don't get used at all because they don't fit into they're not the great at stamina. They don't fit into the stamina meta. So we got things like, I gotta say, King RR is really solid. It's cool. It's like an aggressive rubber. It's like a successor to Judgment almost, but because it's not the best at stamina, it doesn't get used. We got something like Hollow, which is, you know, extremely unbalanced attack, which is kind of fun to use, but because stamina is so over centralizing, it can't get used at all. Now, I'm not saying every Beyblade should have a place, but I'm just saying when you got these new cool Beyblades that are being introduced, but because they don't go to the extreme of being really good at stamina, they just aren't used. That's just another thing. But anyway, peace. I'm done now.